Find a good coach who's actually going to work with you, who's actually going to assess you and help you to understand what's going on with your body and how whatever this program is that gets designed is actually going to get you to your goal. Alan, this next one is Jordan. When should you stretch? How should you stretch? How often should you stretch? I have not looked into stretching in a while, so I'm answering this from the pieces that I remember, and this is a sports-specific question. Well, not sports-specific, but kind of an outcome-specific thing. What I'll say is, in my experience and from what I've seen, using some version of facilitated stretching or a contract-release technique. So for those of you who are actually watching this podcast, you can see what I'm doing, and anyone who's just listening, I'll just try and describe it the best that I can. But let's say, for example, that I'm trying to stretch my pecs or something like that. So if I have my arm right here against something, I might be pushing. So for those of you listening, I've got my arm up at my side at about 90 degrees. If I'm think of the Pec Wall Stretch where you push your arm into the wall. So if I'm pushing into it that way, what that's going to do is it's going to contract my pecs, contract my shoulders, and then I'm going to take a breath in. And then exhale. And as I exhale, I'm going to turn away and try and open that a little bit more, create a little bit greater of a stretch. And then you can repeat that again. So contracting that muscle for about 5 seconds, take that breath in, exhale, and stretch. And again, you're going to try and open up just a little bit more. And you can use that with really any muscle that's significantly tight. The one thing that I will caution you is all the muscles in your traps and in your neck, you only really want to use that technique one time, just because there's a much higher spindle cell count. Your body is going to respond to those stretches much, much quicker. Whereas, from basically the neck down, you're going to have to spend some more time actually doing those stretches. So what I will say is, before training, I've found that using that contract release technique tends to be the best. And I've actually got a video on that somewhere. I think it's called Advanced Stretching and Mobilization Techniques. If y'all want to hop on my YouTube and check that out, obviously it's at Pride Fitness and Movement. But there are some benefits to dynamic stretching, or ballistic stretching as some people call it. And that's where think of watching a track athlete or something like that, where it's really bouncy, really intense looking stretching. And I wish I could remember exactly what it is that causes in the system. But from my understanding and from what I remember, it creates a little bit of movement. It gives a little bit of blood flow to it. So it kind of just warms that tissue up. But one other thing too is major athletes usually have a program that keeps their body pretty supple, keeps them moving pretty well. So they're not going to have, just a crap ton of mobility and flexibility issues. And then this probably isn't the final one, but the final one that comes to my mind right now anyway is static stretching. So these are really, really long holds. If you have chronically tight things, for most people that's their traps, their pecs, their shoulders. If those are just chronically tight, on the days, do not do this before you're lifting, but on the days that you're, just at home or even after a workout, holding these really, really long stretches can help to actually open things up a lot more effectively, and from what I've seen, tend to give people a little bit more benefit long term. So again, this is chronically tight, chronically short muscles. And that's another thing that makes this a little bit more challenging, is that sometimes the muscle that you feel is tight is actually taut. So for anybody who doesn't understand the difference of tight versus taut, I've just got a piece of measuring tape, piece of measuring tape in front of me. For anybody watching this, is a little bit easier, but I mean, think of it like right now, this is just kind of neutral. It's just kind of how it is. Tight is if I am pulling, or taut, is if this gets pulled from a different direction. It's staying tight. So think of if your pelvis starts to rotate forward, your hamstrings are going to be taut because your quads and your hip flexors are pulling your pelvis forward. So those muscles feel tight, but they're only tight because they're trying to pull your hips back into a proper position. So if you just continue stretching and stretching and stretching, you're going to open up those fibers even more, and then it's just going to cause your pelvis to rotate forward even more. So in the long term, that muscle that feels tight, that muscle that feels, oh, I've got to stretch this, I get so much relief when I actually do this, that's actually going to end up having a big drawback in the short term and in the long term, really, because you're just making that problem even worse over that period of time. So this is one of those things where getting a full assessment with a good coach actually helps a lot. And if that's me, fantastic. And if it's someone else that you really like, great. I don't really give a shit. Find a good coach who's actually going to work with you, who's actually going to assess you and help you to understand what's going on with your body and how whatever this program is that gets designed is actually going to get you to your goal. Because you don't want to stretch muscles that are long and weak. You want to stretch muscles that are short and tight. As far as how often you should stretch, me personally, I spend a little bit of time on it every day, but it's mostly just stretching the muscles that I notice are tight, that I feel in myself. And over time, when you have a correct program and you are going through it, you start feeling what muscles are tight, you start feeling what muscles are weak, and you start feeling what benefit am I actually getting when I do this. I mean, my cameraman, Glenn, say hello.
Yo.
Glenn actually was telling me this morning, he's like, I'm gonna call you out, bro. He goes, I hate this shit, man. I gotta tell you, I hate doing this. And then I go through the stretching program and I feel so good afterward, and yada yada yada. And it's one of those things where once you start connecting to routine and start connecting to consistency, you start noticing it, you start feeling it. And Glenn, you can probably right now, when you actually go through your routine, you can probably notice like, oh, I feel really tight here, I feel really tight there, yada yada. And then you go through it and you're like, that's better.
Yes. Noticeably.
Mm-hmm. And you can probably even scan through your body and notice, yeah, I was feeling a lot of tension here beforehand, and that's kind of gone now.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's something that you want to develop over time, is that self-awareness of understanding your body and noticing what works. And when you get to that point, make sure that you're not deluding yourself and still open yourself up to new possibilities, and that you might just be a big dum-dum and try out some new stuff. So, Jordan, that was a great question. Thank you very much. Hey, guys, if you like this clip, please share this out to someone else who needs to hear it. And if you want to hear more, there's actually a whole podcast and a whole YouTube channel. So you can go find us at Pride, Fitness, and Movement on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. Go give us a follow, and we'll see y'all later.